Who's ready to get started? No one's ready to get started. Okay, so I'll be back. Okay, who's ready to get started? All right, excellent, thank you. It's the morning, let's get excited here. More coffee is just over there if you need it. We are going to be talking about MarTech today, and just by show of hands, who's active in the MarTech space? Should be probably lots of people. Excellent. So this is really the right content for you. We're going to be hearing from a really strong panel of speakers who are going to give different perspectives on how MarTech is changing, some of the opportunities that are present in the space, and perhaps what's next. And they will be answering questions, so please jot them down on notepads. They are in front of you. And if you do have any questions towards the end, Dan's going to be looking for those. So with that being said, I would like to introduce our keynote and moderator for today, Dan Radu, founder from Macro. And Macro is, again, our key sponsor for today, and we'd like to thank them for their participation. So please welcome Dan to the stage.
Thank you for the nice introduction. Thank you. Good morning. It's not easy to be in marketing today. It's not easy to define what we do. We have almost 7,000 marketing technologies to choose from to create the magic of customer experience. Is this abundance of choice a good thing? I don't always believe so. But organizations that leverage the power of MarTech, they can successfully grow. However, we often forget about all the people, the processes, and all the training that it's required to make everything work. So today, we all came here to discuss the trends and how companies can use marketing technologies and all the people, the processes that we want to have in place and to run effective marketing operations at scale. So we're going to have some new concepts presented. We're going to have some interesting statistics and interesting research. We have some cool demos there, and hopefully something that you can all take back to your departments and find very actionable. But first, I would like to introduce our wonderful panelists, and it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here today. And please come on up. We got. There you go. All right. So we have Katya. She's the CMO of Microsoft Canada. She's in charge of the central marketing organization, in charge of the processes, the center of excellence, and the operations team. And in her career, Katya worked at Microsoft Canada, Compaq, and HP. Thank you.
Good morning.
All right.
Good morning, everyone.
All right. Good morning. Good to have you here, Katya. We have Brent Chatters. He has over 20 years of digital marketing experience. He is the author of several publications and is now leading Accenture's interactive practice. Good to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Good to have you. Good to have you. Thank you. And then we have Jack Wells. Jack Wells is the senior value engineer for Workfront, and after spending 10 years on the agency side helping big companies, you're now helping large companies get the most value out of the work management systems.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, good to have you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. So it's good to have you here. Thank you for coming. And before we get into the MarTech and into the operations talk and discussion, I love the audience to get to know you a little bit better. So I love and there's something that I'm curious and I wanted to ask you. As a child, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Brent, you want to start? Yeah, I'll start. Originally, I thought I was going to be a dinosaur cowboy. Turns out that's not possible. And then so from there, it was, I kind of thought either going into journalism or going into medicine. And then I had a graphic design background and the internet sort of came out. And it just seemed like a really interesting space. And it kind of felt like the Wild Wild West. There weren't dinosaurs, but, you could create them in the virtual space. So I've been doing that effectively for like the last 20 years. And every morning when I get up, I still love what I do. So.
Very good.
Okay. Initially, I wanted to be a teacher. So I used to put all my dolls and teddy bear in front of me and sharing. And then I moved to a doctor too. And there has been a moment super intense where I intended to go in the art market. But it was not rational enough for me. And so I ended up to do marketing. And I think that I have these two legs, which are technical and creatives. So.
That's great. So I wanted to be an archaeologist as a child. And it wasn't necessarily because I was looking to dig up bones or pottery or what have you, but because I wanted to be Indiana Jones, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to be Indiana Jones? So I had my mom bought me a fedora and a whip, and later decided maybe I didn't want to deal with those analog type of capabilities, and got into the digital space and became a technologist. And now I, whip processes in place and help businesses really make their systems hum.
Very nice. I like the idea of whipping processes into place. So I wanted to be a movie director and an inventor. But I ended up running Macro now, a marketing automation CRM agency, until my childhood dreams come true. Now, on a serious note, I'd like to set the stage by mentioning some research that came from Accenture and Forrester's Consulting. It's called Rethinking the Role of the CMO. And you can, and according to the findings, there's a tremendous opportunity for senior marketing leaders to step into the redefining the role of marketing and collaboration. There's a short link over there, so if you go to that, you'll be able to find the research. You're gonna get after everybody's gonna get an email with the link to that and a few other resources, so you don't need to worry about doing that right now. But I really like the idea that was presented there, the idea of the collaborative CMO. So one paragraph especially that stands out to me is, to deliver world-class experiences, a requirement of unparalleled collaboration is needed across the organization, and the CMO is seen as the connective tissue between different lines of businesses by 90% of the organizations. So in a nutshell, the CMO has the opportunity to fill in these gaps that are left in the C-suite. And a few other interesting statistics that I want to share with everyone is 88% of companies agree the CMO role changed in the last 2 years, and it will continue to change. And 50% of marketing purchasing decisions are happening outside of the marketing department. And that's very interesting. So this interesting trends change what it takes to run digital marketing operations enabled by marketing technology. So I'm curious what everybody's definition of MarTech is. Like, how do you define MarTech today, and how is it different than IT?
I can go first. I would say in simple words that MarTech is the tech infrastructure that enables to provide a delightful customer journey and drive business outcome. It's pretty simple, but from acquisition to nurture to lead creation to create real opportunities and then opportunity to upsell and cross-sell. That's actually what we are looking from this technology, which is to enable just doing our business and provide the right offer to the right people at the right time. It seems to be super simple. I mean, there are a lot of complexity behind it. But I think that's what is super exciting with what we're living, and the fact that the technology is today fully able to provide personalized experience, real nurture, end-to-end view of a customer is just fascinating.
I'll jump in here. I absolutely agree with what Katia has just said about the external-facing aspect of MarTech. I'll take it from a slightly different view, looking at it from an internal perspective, and answer your question about, how's it different than traditional IT technologies. For me, the demands are different for MarTech. It needs to be very usable for the marketer, for the operations teams. It needs to be very intuitive. Technologists, and I'm a technologist, by the way, will deal with certain complexities that I think probably everyone in this room don't want to deal with, right? It needs to be easy. It needs to be understandable, intuitive. It needs to be able to give you a clear picture of your customers, And so I think there are different demands on the marketing technology solutions.
So we take a slightly different view on MarTech. If you think about what is in a common MarTech stack, right? Email, maybe a CMS, maybe a DMP. You can start talking about ad tech, some of that type of stuff. I think part of the problem is when we think about MarTech, we want to get down to like a specific system, right? So I want to have an email system. We actually need to start thinking about platforms and how platforms are enabling. So if you think about a true customer experience, it's not that I get an email and then I go to the web page and then I get a display ad that's completely different, and then I'll go to your website and then I'll get a personalized experience. We actually need to think about what's the thread that connects all that together. And that's not really driven by MarTech. That's actually driven by like the data that underpins all of that. So I think when we think about MarTech as a whole, we actually need to start thinking about the ecosystem that sits in that. And where that gets kind of uncomfortable for people who come from a classical MarTech background is that we're now going to start talking about things like data lakes, data repositories. You're starting to get into things where you're looking at orchestration across multiple platforms. So there's things that you typically would not hear in that MarTech ecosystem that I think is required to totally run it. So I would kind of change the question on like, what is the role that marketing needs to play in collaboration with other teams that have historically, managed those systems and platforms as a whole.
Right. And one interesting statistic was that 50% of the MarTech purchasing decisions are happening outside of the MarTech department, Brent. So how should IT and marketing work together, and what's their role, and how does that inform the purchasing decision?
So I kind of have 2 points of view on this, right? I think the companies that do it well, there's a good collaboration, right? So if we think about like the collaborative CMO, there's a good collaboration between marketing and IT. The ones that don't, marketing wants to go in and they want to act like the system architect. They want to go and say, I want this platform and I want this system. Mm-hmm. And really they should be focused on what is the customer experience I'm trying to create, and then lean on their technology teams. And right now we're talking about IT, but like I would also say the chief digital officer, kind of falls into this category. There's a lot of different like slices and dices on that technology side of stuff. But you've got to sit there and say, this is how I want to represent that customer experience. And then you need to have a technology team that says, this is how we will be able to support that and enable that. And the reason for that is that the technology teams can focus on what are the right systems and platforms to support. So if you think about total cost of ownership on this stuff, right? You kind of get into like certain ecosystems, and it's easier to find talent and skill to run that. And marketing can then be focused on like the marketing outcomes and experiences that they want to drive.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. A question for Katya and Microsoft. What are some of the MarTech pieces that you use in your organization? If you can spend some time describing your marketing operations organization. Yeah, and how do you structure and run your operations at that scale?
Yeah, so this is a slide which is 2 years old, so it's constantly evolving. But I think that the main takeaways from this slide is the continuum that is showing. I totally share what Brent was just mentioning, which is, as a customer, you should have a very consistent experience, whatever touch point you are having with a brand. So being super consistent in what you are recognizing, which is more kind of a traditional brand things, but also the tone of the language that you are receiving, the type of interactions that you are having, and whatever is the type of engagement that you are having. Either you are going to a website, or you are downloading some content, or you are invited to an event, attending the event. What is the follow-up? So the way our MarTech has been structured has been really around one single objective, which is to be able to have the one single view of a customer and to have the historic of each of the interactions that we are having. But what is even more important is that this visibility is super useful when it comes to the sales organization. And there is no good marketing when it's not connected to business. And so now we are in a position to provide our sellers the full journey of a customer. So they're able to not only identify the leads, and the leads have been scored, and the leads have been nurtured and qualified by automated processes that we are using behind, but they are able to, when they are discovering a lead or before engaging with a company, they can see for each contact what is the type of interaction they had with our marketing staff, which website they have been looking for, which type of content they have downloaded, which type of events they have attended. Everything is aimed to be more personalized and more relevant for these customers. So that's the way our MarTech has been built. It's clear that now we are evolving more and more, and as a technology company, I would say it's a little bit different, but we are using more and more our own platforms, Azure and machine learning and AI. We are using our collaboration tools, obviously, to share how we can work and how operations are working, and Dynamics, which is how we are managing the flow, essentially, with our operations, but also with our sellers.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about your organization and how is it structured? Your
yes,
marketing?
so I will more. So we are a subsidiary. So all the transformation that happened on the marketing side at Microsoft has been a real journey between what Corp has been doing and what has happened into the subsidiary. So it's clear that this type of scale is only possible at a worldwide level. And just to give some numbers, I mean, it's 125 subsidiaries, it's 175K activities which are going through this type of operations. And what has been at stake for us when Corp has been creating those global engagement program for our customers based on audience and based on product has been making sure that when we are doing things at a local level, we are integrating what we are doing into those operations so that we can have this total view. And I've seen over the last 3-4 years, I would say, the type of requirements from the team evolving. Mm-hmm. So we have more processes. At the same time, we have far more understanding of what is the behavior of our customers. So we understand far better what we're doing. In terms of skills, I mean, we've seen all the analytic skills from our marketeers growing and growing. I would say what is interesting also is that the type of conversation inside the organization has changed also. Because the visibility that we have in terms of KPIs, in terms of insights from the customer is super valuable when you are engaging the discussion with your sales team, for example. Mm-hmm. And I think that it has changed a lot from, okay, I give you some leads, but without any context and without any real value, to something which is, okay, I'm able to explain you all the customer journey and why this lead is super accurate and why you should activate on it. And at the same time, the fact that our sales team are having this visibility on their customers, what are they engaging with in terms of product, what are they engaging with in terms of content or type of activities, I can tell you could totally change the perspective on how the marketing team has been speaking. Aside from that, I mean, we are using more and more our own marketing services engine, I would say, which are located across the world, and we are partnering with very great companies for that. And on the operation side, I mean, people have demonstrated more and more technical skills just because they are using those tools every day.
That's a very interesting evolution of the team and that you've experienced there. And I'm curious, like, how do you manage the collaboration and everybody working together and all the processes at the scale?
So I would say, and also maybe it's a little biased because we are a technology company. I mean, we have never seen that there is a strong gap between IT and marketing because, right. I mean, we are technology, if I may. What I would say is that the fact that we have now a technological backbone, which is enabling to see the same things about a customer, about a prospect, about a product, really foster interesting discussion. And I would say the collaboration has never been as strong. And I've been in marketing for a while. I would say we are now in a great situation to have super documented conversations internally because we have the data and we have the insights. And more using those technology because we are using predictive analysis, we are using AI more and more. And because our teams are selling those products, I mean, they see very concretely what does it mean.
Can I just add on top of that? When you look at the way that marketers are collaborating today, the other thing that I think is dynamically different, and I don't know if we've really adjusted in the market, is also not just how you collaborate internally, but also how you're collaborating with your external partners as well, right? So like think about agencies, and it's a terrible analogy, but I'm going to use it anyways. Like I was sitting down with a couple folks the other day, and I was like, I could not imagine what it was like to work in like the 1940s because, like how did people work? Like you didn't have emails, like somebody'd write a memo and go into like some tube and like shoot somewhere and then you wait for something. Like I couldn't rationalize it. And I kind of feel like, in the last, couple decades, technology has come in. We kind of, adopted some early practices. People use email and whatnot, but like you've got things like Slack and other real-time capabilities that allow you to share files, share and collaborate. And then we were just talking about like Workfront earlier, where now you need to start thinking about like the analytics of collaboration as well, right? So as you're working with teams, like is it taking 50 people to review a single piece of copy? It's probably true. I see a couple people smiling, so that tells me it is true. I know these things happen. It slows down the speed of the organization. We're not really leveraging our technology to truly understand and measure how to improve, what we're doing and improve those workflows. And I kind of think that's like one of those conversations that for whatever reason, organizations haven't really made that shift to drive at the scale that they need. Like I feel like this should be something that's on the CMO's agenda all the time, and it's usually being driven by like a director or a VP that feels the pain, but the organization hasn't like totally embraced it yet.
Yeah, absolutely. As an agency, as our whole team, it follows strict processes on how they will do the work and manage and request campaigns and work on campaigns, collaborate on everything that we support our clients. And that brings us a very good question for Jake as well. What have you seen have been some of the changes that impact marketing operations in the last 5-10 years?
So obviously there's been significant number of changes that have occurred over the last 5 to 10 years. The thing that I find to be most significant is, what Dan, you mentioned at the onset of the panel, is really the proliferation of technology solutions in platforms that are out there. I'm sure that many of you are probably familiar with the marketing technology landscape infographic that's been in play for since about 2007, I think was the first one. And if you look at that infographic and how it's grown, Dan, you said somewhere around 7,000 different technologies that are out there. And so that becomes extremely overwhelming, right, for the marketer, for the technologist, to really kind of wade through. And so, as Brent said earlier, you have to have a reliance on technology-focused people to do your evaluation, to help guide that process. And at times, you're probably bringing in marketing technologists into your department and expanding your skill set. And so, our opinion at Workfront is that it's all well and good that we are bringing technology, but it's distracting from two other very important factors. Again, something that you mentioned at the onset, which is the process and the people. We believe that your success is dependent upon understanding and bringing solutions around all three of those factors. So you first have to really engage and look at how are you delivering product, or services, and where are the opportunities. Really challenge yourself around how to improve and how to get over gaps and to innovate. Then you find a technology that is going to support that. Not necessarily support your old process, right? Don't just find a technology that's going to enable a broken process that you have been doing for years, right? You have to really challenge and innovate in a way that is going to improve your processes. And then the last factor is make sure whatever you're choosing, whatever processes you're you're putting in place are going to be adoptable and are going to be something that the team is engaging in and that they see the value in, right? Because the only way you're going to get compliance, is ultimately if those individuals see the why behind, why you're asking them to put in their time, or why you're asking them to catalog a customer contact or something along those lines. So it has to be adoptable, usable, as I said at the beginning, so that you can enable them to do their best work. Because ultimately, that's your primary job, is to make sure your people are delivering their best possible work out to the market.
Right, Brent, we'd love to know more about your experience and what you're seeing in the rise of the collaborative CMO. So how have you seen CMOs become successful in the collaboration? Right. Would they put experience first, or would they put technology first?
So let's just break that down a little bit, right? So I'm sure over the last couple of years, everybody's read the CMO is going extinct. The CMO is like the chief experience officer, chief customer officer, chief growth officer, chief, whatever the new thing is that's going to, drive your clickbait to get you in there. And, I think the way that we've looked at it is we've effectively said, let's just look at the CMO for a second, and let's look at what their role is at that C level. And then, kind of how does that cascade down the organization? And so all of those new C level jobs that I just described should be driven by the CMO. And then they need to think about, do I have a VP of experience? Do I have a VP of blah, 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 blah? And you go across all of those things. But then it also means that now the CMO's mandate is a lot bigger. So it's not just about brand. It's not just about, our customers, aware of what we're doing. You have sales targets, right? You are accountable for outcomes. That kind of changes things. I've watched CMOs who are used to being very brand centric to all of a sudden, I have a sales target and I don't know how I'm going to manage to that. And there's a little bit of a panic to it. And so, this is forcing collaboration, because now I have to collaborate with my sales team. And I need to understand what does their sales pipeline look like, and how am I driving leads? And as marketers, we've talked about the full funnel, end to end. But I don't really think we've actually thought about in my role, how do I activate that funnel, and what does that mean, and how am I going to be able to move people through it? And so now with technology, I also have to have conversations with the chief technology officer, the chief digital officer, and they're not about the plumbing. They shouldn't be having plumbing conversations. They might play one on TV, but they should never be a plumber. But they should be, focused on, again, like I was saying earlier, what is that outcome that I'm trying to drive from a consumer experience? And really, I think the big problem is orchestration today, right? It's very easy for us to get a campaign out. In the old days, we used to talk about integrated marketing. I hate saying this is the old days, because that was 2004. But integrated marketing. I had a TV ad, then I had a website that was kind of on brand, and all of that stuff was, connected. In the new day, everything's digital, right? So I've got a search team, I've got an email team, I've got a social team. But by the way, things like TV are changing, things like radio are changing. I can buy that programmatically. So that's adopting digital principles. And so as a marketer, my job is, to drive collaboration is to also say, well, how are those channels evolving? Kind of how am I working with those different teams to orchestrate and drive all of that communication experience across the different channels as a whole.
Yeah. And a question for Workfront, what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing in marketing operation which slows down achieving the scale that we're out talking about?
Yeah, so again, many challenges that we're facing, but the one that really surfaces the top to me, and Brent mentioned a bit about this already as well, which is the data that is housed in a variety of systems you might have, whether it be your CRM system, whether it be your financial system, whether it be lead management, whatnot. Those systems are wholly disconnected, right? For the most part, what we find is they're very isolated from each other. So what we find is that departments tend to be isolated and siloed, and then also systems tend to be isolated and siloed. So a key challenge for you to really push forward is to interconnect those systems and drive it and have a digital backbone that pulls and pushes data, without a lot of effort on your part, right? That the plumber analogy is very good, right? Because we don't want to have to worry about how data gets from point A to point B. Oftentimes, you probably are actually manually doing that, or somebody is doing that, right? But what we want to do is automate those things. So systems that we bring to bear, data lakes and things of that nature has to be very open for us. And so that's how we contend with that challenge, right? Is to buy products that are going to have an open API, that are going to have an easy interchange of data between systems, so that it's at your fingertips and it's comprehensive in nature.
Yeah.
If I may just elaborate on this one, and it goes to the collaboration that we just discussed, with the transformation which is happening on the market right now. I mean, there is no department who can really think his transformation without collaborating with the others, and data is really at the heart of everything. So having this single view enabled by a single backbone is actually the only key to unlock the insights for your business. Every day we are meeting customers who are asking, how can I get the insights of my data so that I can think about my next business model? If you don't have a single view of your data, and if you don't break those silos, there are actually no way that it can happen. And it gives a super comfortable position for the CMO, because having those insights from the very beginning, it's an amazing opportunity to play a major role in the achievement of the targets for your company, but also most of the time, the CMO is in a super good position to identify next waves or next business model coming in.
And I'm curious, at Microsoft, to make everything work, like how do you decide what do you keep internally in the house and what makes sense to outsource to a partner, to an agency?
I would say it's a common answers for these questions in any field, which is you concentrate on the core and what is your core delivery on the market. Microsoft is delivering services, technology services. We are not an agency.
Right.
We are not experts in operations. So that's the way we are deciding what we keep in-house, what we outsource. I would say one thing to incur on what has been said earlier is that it's really tools, process, and people. You never outsource something. Well, I mean, it's my experience. If you are not clear about what you want to achieve in terms of process, and once things are going smoothly, when you understand what you want to do, I mean, that's a moment where you can outsource. Thinking that outsourcing will solve your problem might be true. My experience is it's a little bit more complicated.
Can I just add on to that? And I'm going to make I don't know if it's controversial, but I'm going to make a statement nonetheless. Don't let your agencies hold you hostage by your technology, right? Like this is like when we and I say this having been both a marketer, like I've been in your shoes, and I say this as a consultant, looking at how organizations kind of like construct this stuff. And often what I see is that, go back several years, agencies own the licenses with Salesforce, Adobe, whatever you want to, throw in there, Microsoft. They owned the licenses, they owned, the constructs around the data. And then for a long time, it took businesses, to really understand if I'm holding some data here and I don't have it connected to these platforms and systems over here, I can't really do anything. And I don't think agencies were doing this maliciously. I don't think they were like, I'm going to hold you hostage for it. But, nobody really woke up and realized that, I need to have the data that sits within my ad tech, so double click, and this is why we often talk about, in-source your programmatic media buying, right? Have a trade desk in-house. Do you have to have the talent and the team to run that trade desk? No, right? All this stuff typically sits in the cloud, so you still need an agency. The agency is not going away. You still need that partner. But the way that your technology is now connected and who owns it and who's accountable for it, is a very different way of thinking about it as a whole. And I have seen some agencies who have sat down and said like, well, we've got you because we own all of your email. And so then it's like, do you really? Because we're going to migrate that over. And, that becomes a very, hard internal conversation. So, I think great partners will create great content and great customer experiences. And you need to get access, and what agencies can provide is access to that talent, because they want to work across numerous brands. They want to work across a variety of different accounts. But you want your content and your data, or your technology and your data, to sit in-house so that you can do like all that orchestration stuff I was describing earlier. It has to be owned by you.
Yeah, I've seen that situation several times with our clients as well. So how should marketing operations teams manage the data that, especially that it pertains to customers?
So the question is, how
should marketing operations teams manage data as it relates to a customer?
Do you want me to give you the boring answer, or do you want? Because like the boring answer is kind of a little bit like there's privacy concerns, right? Everybody's familiar with like GDPR, the things are happening, over in Europe. Katya and I, we've talked about this a couple times. So I've worked for big national companies. Typically, the stance is when it comes to data, you need to take the highest standard that sits across the globe. The nice thing about that is, like, back in the day when Castle came out, I was like, we're Castle compliant. Like, I didn't have to worry about it. It was just there. When Pipita came out, I'm Pipita compliant. Like, it was just there. It was a very, very relaxing spot to be in as a marketer. And then I talked to colleagues who were in the space. I'm like, I'm running around. It was like Y2K. Everybody's like trying to figure out how do I understand where the data is, how I'm going to notify, how am I going to manage cookies. And even now, right? Like, things are happening on an international scale. So GDPR. I've got clients that are Canadian-based clients, but they have to be GDPR compliant because they have customers that are coming in from Europe. And so, nobody wants to go to jail, nobody wants to pay a fine, and so everybody's, very quickly rushing to do these things. So that's kind of, the boring, I think, kind of a little bit of the boring answer. I think the more exciting answer is, the way that you need to manage your data. I think of like, data as currency, right? And from an Accenture perspective, we're talking about data minimalization. It's actually like, you don't need to collect everything you know about everybody. Be specific in terms of what you want to collect, how you want to use it, and the value realization that your customer is going to get for it, right? So if I collect your address, why do I need your address? And how is that going to provide value to you? If I'm shipping you a package, totally makes sense, right? If I ask for your birthday, am I just doing it because I think it's going to be like kind of cute to say like, hey, happy birthday on whatever? Or am I actually going to send you some sort of value-based content where, you're getting a discount or something else? So it's kind of thinking about how you're actually going to use that data. And I think there's a habit right now where we got to kind of collect everything and use it. And then the last piece that we also don't talk about too often is that there's the data I as a customer will freely give up, right? My name, my email address, that type of stuff. There's the behavioral data that we collect. So, where I click, the things I do, I'm not explicitly saying things, but my behavior is being measured. And then there's the last layer, which is, when you think about AI and machine learning, they're taking the cues of all of those things and they're making inferences about who you are and what you're doing, right? So we're kind of getting to this point where, from a fraud perspective, I could probably guess whether or not you are you based on the way that you kind of click and move around the web, plus the data, plus the things I've collected in the cookie, and say, if that looks suspicious and you're logged into a site, should I like log you out and send you, a text or something to say like, can you please validate to confirm that you've gotten those types of things? So, like the world of data is we often talk about creepy versus cool. It's, I'll use the Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility, right? Use your data well.
Can I just add just a bit to that? I think it goes back, Brent talked a lot about the collection aspect of it. And then we talked earlier about just the management and the transformation, having the right tools in place, which will allow you to apply the right business logic and business rules to it, rather than, kind of some of the old practices, which is, Sally's got a spreadsheet that she collected at an event where she's got all of this email and such, on her laptop, right? That increases your risk significantly. So I think the main thing to really think about is, as you're collecting data, making sure that we've got the right protections in place so that you can continue to have the confidence of the consumer in mind at all times.
But actually, it's a good insight when you're choosing MarTech, making sure that the platforms that you are choosing are enabling full compliancy. because I mean you're absolutely right. I mean there is no choice, and especially if you take care about the reputation of your brand, you have to stick with the higher standard. But actually, I mean, those platforms are enabling to do it in an easier way, as long as you have also the right processes. But it's absolutely key to make sure that handling the data with the full respect of the environment is respected.
Yeah. So, like, how can teams best demonstrate the value of marketing, what they do? Like, how can identify, track KPIs, and measure, like, what's their marketing's contribution to organizational goals and strategies?
Sure. So, I guess the blatant statement is start measuring, right? I'd say too often we find that marketers don't have any idea what value they're bringing. So the first step in, and ultimately they oftentimes don't understand all the work that's being conducted. We think about work in three different categories, and you may have different terms for this, but we think about a mix of the work that you're doing and the deliverables that you have, and we call it transform, right? The things that are changing your business, helping you grow the business. Usually those are aligned with strategic initiatives from the organization. You have things that are operational, right? Running the business. And then you have what we tend to refer to as shadow work, right? Things that are non-strategic, things that are kind of departmental work. And as you look across all the activities that are going on in your organization, if you start to understand and collect all of that data in one place where you know and you can categorize it, this is an initiative that is about growing the business, this is an initiative about running the business, all this is work that we probably shouldn't be doing, then you can begin to align each one of those activities with some type of measure, right? Hopefully we're eliminating the shadow work as much as possible, and you can say, okay, this transformation initiative is meant to help us, produce more sales, right? Or it's to increase brand awareness or something along those lines. That begins to lead you down a path of what are the appropriate KPIs. If it's a revenue generation type of target, you may be looking at, how are we getting people into the store or online, or downloading the app, or doing a rate quote, or what have you, right? All which have direct impacts to the bottom line, right? To revenue. If it's cost savings, it's operational in nature. That's usually going to be an ops type of initiative. How many things are you delivering on time or late, or how many revisions do you have? A lot of insights can be taken from it. Not all are necessarily quantitative in nature, right? Some are going to be more qualitative, so you have to really align on that. But the primary thing that you have to do, I believe, is evaluate every initiative, any activity that you're doing. Challenge the people who are requesting you to do it, and say let's identify what are the KPIs for this initiative, and then at the conclusion of that, you've got to measure your success. And then after if you succeed or fail, you make decisions in the future to optimize the value that you're bringing to the organization. That's really the only way you're going to be able to get control over the type of work effort you have to put into delivering for the organization.
I just want to add on to that, right? I think that if you want to be able to explain to the organization the value that marketing does, you need to get really good at telling the story with numbers, right? And then the second thing is you need to speak like the CFO. I'm sorry, but if you're showing up to a meeting, you're talking about clicks, nobody cares. It's interesting, but really nobody cares. It's great as a diagnostic tool, but at the end of the day, if you're not talking about revenue, cost takeout, or extending lifetime value as we move more and more to a service economy, right? So effectively reducing churn. Those are kind of the three things. It's not that big a secret. And I think sometimes we try and get too fancy, but it's like those three things. Just show up and be able to talk to, I'm going to influence one of those three things. And that's the value I'm providing to the company. you know, and everything else stems from there. If you're talking about brand, well, brand's going to drive loyalty. Loyalty means stickiness. Stickiness means reducing churn, right? Like that's the connective dot that you need to start to show within the organization. And so the ability to tell the story is also hard. Like we often show up, there's a lot of numbers, and I watch people where they stumble over the numbers and they're trying to, oh, you're like, this was this, and like, what system did this come from? And well, why was that different last week? And you're not focused on the business outcome, and instead you're focused on what system or platform or wherever that came from. And you know, I think we're losing the story in that as well. So those would be kind of my insider tips.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, Katya. With you fully. I think the story that you have to tell internally to the organization probably is hard numbers. But you, inside of the operations, can look at some of those indicators to get an idea of how well you're doing, right? So there's an internal kind of evaluation, and also then maybe to your leadership, you absolutely do what Brent says, which is really focus in on those quantifiable numbers.
Yeah.
I just wanted to provide example. I agree with what has been said, just in terms of sharing what we are looking at. Obviously, direct revenue is one, but it's not controlled by the subsidiary, so I'm fine with that. But we are measuring actually influence revenue for sure. More operationally, we are measuring the level of engagement that we are with our accounts. And when we are discussing with the business, identifying some of the customers that you have never engaged and showing through the activities that you are doing how you can change the situation and move the needle. I mean, it's really where you bring the value of marketing, and it makes the conversation far more easy. The fact that we have those KPIs, and the fact also that those type of metrics and are accessible every day, from a very operational standpoint to at the end of the quarter or at the end of the period, you have all those levels of visibility to show how you are going to influence the business, and how you have influenced the business is actually the type of discussion that you need to have.
Yeah. Some of the things, for example, when we support large marketing operations, you have your attribution number, so first touch, last touch, multiple touches that you're trying to measure and divide cost of campaigns per revenue. You attach these campaigns to opportunities. In terms of operations, also when our team, for example, supports large campaign executions, we look at how many campaigns are open, how many have been requested, how many do we have content for. We try to anticipate also per business line, per product, how many campaigns we have in the pipeline to work on in order to put it in operations. And then they go through different process, different stages of the process, from campaign being requested, being reviewed, how many pieces we have, being worked on, being tested, being launched, and then reported. So then we can measure how many campaigns in the pipeline that we're supporting are all of these stages. And then we look also, a very important number that we look at is what's the time it takes from a campaign from the idea of a campaign, or a campaign and then being requested, to being executed and launched. So that type of measure, it's important for us in supporting marketing operations. And now we'd love to hear from the audience as well. We're moving into the question and answer period. And we'd love to hear what has been on your mind. And we have a first very eager question over there. Do we have a microphone that goes through? We got it, perfect.
New world, new marketing. Top 3 hires that you make, and what are the skills that you're looking for?
I'll take a crack at it first.
Hiring.
You need somebody who can speak to and understand the data. So it could be a BI person. It could be somebody that understands the data. I want that person to be buddied up with like the financial team. So in my past life, I had somebody who was like every day talking to the financial team. And as a marketer, dirty secret, but it allowed me to grow my budget, right? So it was a $50K budget for display advertising or search or something like that. And we struck a deal where we said, effectively, if it costs us X number of dollars to produce this thing. If our CPA is within this threshold, then as long as I operate within that threshold, you'll continue to fund me because I'm the best channel to drive that outcome. I was like, absolutely. So 50K turned into $4 million, right, over the course of a year. Like that was rapid growth. And we did that across a couple different pockets of budget. So, somebody can understand that. I think you need, from a collaborative perspective, you need somebody who can own the relationship with your technology teams as well. So who's going to be talking to the technology teams to represent what you need. They don't need to be a solution architect, but they do need to be able to talk, confidently around technology, but they need to represent marketing's outcomes and drive. Specifically, going back to those measures, I need to either reduce churn, drive faster, whatever, those types of things. And then I think the third is somebody who is focused on what I would call orchestration. So we might call it a journey keep or something like that. But marketers, I think, are making a shift from what I would call like two-dimensional marketing. So I market in a single channel, the message goes out, it's campaign oriented, towards recognizing that consumers are in an always-on state. And so I need to be able to get to a consumer across multiple channels at multiple times. And now companies are also moving towards omni-channel enablement, so it's not just digital. But if I walk into a grocery store and I'm standing in an aisle and I'm looking at something, is there some sort of analytics that's happening in that physical space that's understanding where my phone is tracking and how I'm moving and engaging within that space? And then is that being rationalized back to what I'm doing online? So if you know that I stopped in the cookie aisle, should we monetize that data and then drive cookie?
That's getting
sales.
into the creepy again.
It absolutely is. But the difference here is that the customer's not going to connect the fact that they were sitting in the cookie aisle. So I'm not immediately sending you that cookie thing, but I'm looking at ways that I can start to operationalize and use it, right? So,
Say creepy, I say curation.
Yeah.
Say on my own part, just give me the cookies I want.
Yeah.
If I may answer slightly differently, rather than the free roles, the free capabilities that I'm looking for people that I'm recruiting right now, analytics is definitely one, storytelling is the second one, and the third one is definitely understanding business impact and being able to translate business into technical or technical into business.
They gave great answers, so I don't have any other.
Thank you. Thank you, Francois.
Hi, you were mentioning before the importance of giving organizational stakeholders the why when you're moving through a period of digital transformation. Can you drill a little bit deeper on some successful tactics you've employed on that front to sort of counteract the inevitable cultural resistance that can creep up when you're trying to work through, a platform adoption or, digitally transforming an organization?
Right. So change management is extremely difficult, and I think for me it comes down to really understanding what are the measures that that particular stakeholder is tuned into, right? What is it important for them to have greater speed to market? Or they in a sales organization where they're just trying to generate more opportunities, whatever the case may be. Really being in tune with what's important to them, right? And then demonstrating to them that this will enable them to achieve that or to achieve greater of that, whatever it may be. And the resistance part tends to be that it's more habitual, right? People are it's a lot easier for me to go down to Kadi's office and say, hey, can I need to get an email out because it's important for us to, do this event, right? Publish this event. Versus going maybe to a new process, which, you go to an intake form and you fill it out and provide it. Makes it more efficient for Kadia. What's the value exchange for you? And that may be as simple as her team is able to respond more quickly. When you go to Kadia's office, she's not there. Now you're waiting. Right, and you don't get that request in, and it delivers late. So that's just a simple example of how you could demonstrate the value that they're going to get. And the initial state is going to be difficult, right? Because everybody's learning a new process, and you have to be diligent about continuing to send the message this is what value is coming to you. This is where we need you to do this. Don't come to my office, close the door, whatever you need to do to instill that in there. So just evaluate your stakeholders and understand where the value proposition is for them. Other question?
Oh, we got one there and then one over there.
I was going to try to project, actually, but glad the mic made it to me. Any thoughts on sort of the ever-expanding marketing mission and whether to embrace it or fight it or sort of narrow it down and distill it down to its parts? Like, what is your philosophy on that? Just for context, I work at a scale-up. We're 300 people strong, so not as big as your guys' organizations. So I'm constantly fighting, like, oh, marketing should also do this, and you should also do that. And how about you think about employee advocacy and all of this stuff? Where do I go from there?
It seems like you got
Collaborative. You're very collaborative.
I would say start with the business objective of your company. As long as you are contributing to the business outcome, and in our case, I mean, at a subsidiary level, it's pretty simple. I mean, we need to engage our customer as much as we can in the most relevant way with the most relevant content. And we have to create the connection with our sales team so that they can be as efficient as possible. I would say that's our primary mission. And then there is also a good mapping between what our corporation is doing, and sometimes we are identifying some gaps. That happens. And based on our workload and the relevancy, I mean, we can go there. So in the past, we have been super engaged into diversity and inclusion because we really think that it's super important. It resonates extremely well with our customers. It's part of our culture, of course, but I think that we have identified pretty early that that's definitely an area where we can go a step beyond in delighting our customers. So in that case, we pick this battle. I would say you need to constantly adjust based on what you think is absolutely key for your customers, and also based on the means you have. You can't go everywhere, but I would start with the big rocks that you can't avoid, and then through the convictions that you have that you can definitely enhance those business outcomes, would be the next steps and the way we are dealing with it.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add on top of that, so the CMO is got the shortest tenure of any of the C-suite. It's typically about 4 years. And I think it's partially driven by exactly that challenge, right? The agenda is continuing to get bigger. They're being asked to do more stuff. The CMOs that do it well have very clear agendas, and they're very good at prioritizing towards specific business outcomes, and they've been able to make that sort of shift. So I don't think an organization can do everything, but like the challenge that we've kind of created as marketing organizations, and even more so in Canada, is that our budgets actually don't grow, right? If you're like, hey, I got like a 2% increase in my budget, don't be proud of that. Like you're growing at like effectively the rate of inflation, and typically budgets follow GDP. So like you're not really growing. And by the way, the average Canadian marketing budget is half of what it is in the US. Kind of makes sense, kind of doesn't. If you're a satellite company, you're probably an adopt and go. If you're a Canadian-owned, fully owned Canadian company, you probably do want to have that budget that's more comparable to a US budget. So it's about 7.5% of your total revenue. So then be very specific in terms of what you're going to do and how you're going to use your dollars to drive what you want to do as a business outcome.
Thank you. It's certainly true about US versus Canada. So the discussion has been very informative. Some of the things that I made mental notes about are the integrated technology stack, making sure the tools you have, they work together so allows you to orchestrate different campaigns. Collaboration process, work management, internally and also externally with other resources. Marketing operations also require like a supportive partner. So you need to focus on your core, what you are as a business, and outsource what you're not good, outsource some of the insights. So one last thing here. There was one statistics was that 76% collaboration leaders are investing in emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence compared to only 45% traditional marketers. So what's the next big thing? What would we be talking here in 5 years from now?
Artificial intelligence is definitely one, and machine learning. So I give an example into the operations. We are using, initially we were making the scoring model based on some rules. Then we have been evolving into predictive analysis for that. And now we are using artificial intelligence so that there are automatic adjustments in terms of what content proposed to what audience at what time. So this is a super interesting field of analysis. This is also the kind of technology that we are using in some of the interaction with our customers, and you're all aware of that. I would say for us that's probably the next biggest thing, where it can not only increase constantly the insights that we are having around our customers, but also if it's used properly. And I go back with, we have to be very careful in how we are using this technology, what we do, but it gives a lot of perspective in terms of the customer experience and making it really delightful.
My answer is probably a little bit more cynical. It's not a good conference if somebody doesn't talk about AI, blockchain, VR, augmented reality, right? Like those are all the hot things. Go back 10 years, social, local, mobile. There's like these trends that constantly go. So what I would actually say is, don't worry about being what is the next technology. Think about how you have an organization that is technology ready, right? So what that means is, how are you testing new things as they come up? How are you looking at scaling those things? And then how are you collaborating, both internally, but also with like external, companies and partners, have a safe space to say like, hey, did you guys try this? What did you think about that? Right? So like right now, like to kind of bake this into the here and now, if you think about blockchain, right? Everybody's talking about blockchain. Well, how does blockchain change the world? Well, it's got real implications to media. It can start to change how you buy media. It can start to change the way that like web analytics as a whole changes. You start getting to things like smart contracts, right? All of those things are different ways that it's going to change. Do I know all the answers to it? No. But like as you start to watch, who's doing what, have those dialogues, listen to who's doing those things, but really think about how your organization is like intaking technology, using it, testing it, and learning from it, right? And then the things that work for you, scale it. The things that don't, figure out like, is this worth making an investment, or do I park it and wait for it to get more mature?
That's cynical, but it's realistic. And just to anchor on, we were discussing about the type of profile that we are looking. I think that what the big difference is, we are looking for people who are constantly learning. And it goes back to what you're saying. We don't know exactly what would be the next ones, but we need to be able to have people who are learning super fast, to embed what's coming into your organization.
Yeah, as an organization, you need to have kind of a growth mindset, right? As opposed to a fixed mindset. You need to be very agile with small a, right? You have to have nimbleness and be able to accept the change and figure out the best way for your organization to enable that, or to enable your organization through that. And don't be afraid to fail, right? You really have to try things and see how it works, and measure them, as I said before, so that you know whether or not you need to pivot and make change.
Yeah, thank you. So that's been a very good conclusion to our panel discussion. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Katya. Thank you, Brett, for being here. Thank you very much for all of you in the audience to coming this morning. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, CMA, for helping us put together. We're very honored to be a member of the CMA. Thank you. Thank you very much to the venue for hosting us. Thank you very much for the AV crew as well. And we'll have the video recorded, send it to everyone, as long as links to some of the things we've been referencing. And now, come on up. Thank you.